Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and iOS 14.5 Beta 5 and iOS 14.4.2 came out this week, and I wanted to talk about the overall experience and also some new features that are in iOS 14.5 Beta 5. And so let's first go over that, then we'll talk about iOS 14.4.2, then Beta 5, and then the YouTube community poll and more, and also when to expect iOS 14.5 release candidate and the final release. Now the first thing is new features. In iOS 14.5 Beta 5, there's a few things I didn't mention in the initial video, and the first thing has to do with a pop-up that's showing up not only in iOS 14.5 Beta 5, but also 14.4.1 and 14.4.2, and that is an icon or a little pop-up that says to share music, tap this menu on any album or playlist. Now, this has been the share button for some time, and for some reason they're just letting us know that we can share music at this point. So that's something that's a little bit new. Now, another thing that's new has to do with actually a feature they removed. Now, if you had T-Mobile and some other carriers, you had the option to have exclusively 5G use. So if you go into settings and then you go to cellular, under cellular, go to cellular data options. And as you can see here, it says data roaming, voice and data mode. Prior to this, we had the option to switch to 5G standalone. That has been removed with Beta 5. Whether or not that will come back with Beta 6 or release candidate or whatever's next here, it's hard to say, but right now it's not there at all. So we'll hopefully see that in the future. Here's what it looked like before. Let's take a look. Here's a screenshot of what it looked like before 5G standalone, and it was there, but hopefully they bring it back. Right now it's not available. Now the next thing is, if we go into the Apple Podcasts app, there's something that has been added or updated, and this was there with Beta 4 as well, and that's an accounts icon or your account in the upper right. Prior to this, it was just a notification bell, but they've added accounts, and it seems like that's been added so that you can maybe pay for podcast subscriptions in the future. They did these sort of things with Apple News, for example, and they added accounts. So maybe we'll have something like that in the future, but this was updated, and so maybe we'll see that. There's been rumors of subscription services coming to podcasts, so maybe we'll see something like that in the future. Now, the next thing has to do with auto brightness. So if we go to our settings, then we go to accessibility, then display and text size. At the bottom, we have auto brightness. We can now turn this on or off with Siri. We can say, hey, and then say her name after that, or we can actually press and hold the power sleep wake button and activate it that way. So let's go ahead and try that. Turn on auto brightness. You'll see it'll take just a moment.
On it. Okay. Auto brightness is now on.
Now, if you're in the setting, it won't turn on until you go into it or go out of it and go back into it, and you'll see it's now on. You can do the same to turn it off. Turn off auto brightness. Takes a moment, and you'll see it says on it, and now it's off. And so again, you have to go out of it, go back in, and you'll see auto brightness is off. So that's something that I normally leave on, but I turn off during videos so the actual brightness of the display doesn't change when I'm recording a video. But generally that's on as it saves battery. Unless you're in bright sunlight all day long, that should be on to save some battery. Now the next thing has to do with something that hasn't been mentioned in any video that I've made or that I've seen anyone else make, and that has to do with an icon that has changed. So if you go into settings, and then we go back and scroll down to phone. Under phone, you'll see announce calls. Now announce calls, this icon is new. So if I bring this up here, you can see the announce icon or announce calls icon. Let me show you what it looked like before. And so prior to this update, it looked like this. As you can see here on the left, it's a little speaker. If I go back, it's now a little phone in the icon. So they've changed that a little bit. That's what it was like, or that's what it's like now. And this is what it's like before. So it's a little bit different than it was before. Not a huge change, and thanks to Dawood Malik for sending that in. He made that aware, or made me aware of that, as I hadn't seen that before elsewhere. Now, there's something else with the iPad that is, whether or not it's a bug, I'm not sure, but it seems like it's something that's a little bit new. On the iPad, when you boot it up, we know that there's an Apple logo that will now orient to the orientation you're holding your Apple device in. So whether you're holding it in landscape like this or portrait, it will boot up and show you that logo and change as you're booting it up. It will no longer change orientation when you're booting it up. So if I power it off here, we'll turn it off for a moment. We'll give it just a second to turn off, and then we'll turn it back on. Let's hold this. And if I leave it in landscape, we'll leave it here. Now let's try that again. We'll turn it back on. Give it just a moment. There we go. Now the orientation of the Apple logo is correct. If I move the iPad quickly, it doesn't change. And this is pretty typical with this update. Some people saw it change immediately after you changed it before. Now it won't change until it's booted up. So it will boot properly to the proper orientation. There we go. And if you unlock your device, it works fine. And so now that it's unlocked, it's working properly now and as expected. And so those are the new features with that. There's also in the Watch app, if you're using the newest versions of Apple Watch, there's a slight change to one of the Apple Watch faces. So let's go into the Watch app. Now, under the stripe watch face, there's a new indigo color. Now, we've had indigo in other watch faces before, but this could hint at new cases coming out for the spring that have new colors to them. Usually they do that every year, and indigo could be one of them since they've added it to the striped watch face. So that's something new as well. Also in the code of Beta 5 is references to an unreleased iPad Pro with an A14X chipset in it. So according to Bloomberg, the chip is expected to be on par with the M1 in terms of speed, but that's all there is just reference in the code, nothing more. Now, iOS 14.4.2 at this point has only been out for a day or so, or a full day at this point. And I didn't want to do a full follow-up on it because it hasn't been out long enough to determine battery life, since it usually takes a day or two for things to settle down, the background processes to finish, the indexing to finish. So it's not fair to say that battery will be good or bad without actually testing it out. However, those that have tested it so far, and I have it on my iPhone 11 Pro Max, but those that have tested it so far have said that it's basically the same as 14.4.1, which we expect because it's just a security update. It patches an important security hole, and that's it. So really with 14.4.1 to 14.4.2, it's just a security fix. I really would not expect any differences as far as anything else, bugs, battery, or anything. I haven't heard anyone say, though, that when you close out of an app, it lags, though. So maybe they fix that as well. But at this point, I'm going to give it a few more days. And if you want to see a separate follow-up during the week instead of the weekend this time, let me know and I'll do a poll about that. Now, when it comes to iOS 14.5 Beta 5, I've been using it primarily on my iPhone 12 Pro Max. I also have it on the iPhone 11, and I have iPadOS 14.5 Beta 5 on my iPad Pro 12.9 from 2020. And so let's talk about some of the issues I've had and the overall experience. And the first thing is it's been pretty good. For me anyway, I haven't had a single app crash, which is good. I haven't had any lag whatsoever when closing out of an app, for example. And I've had no issues with it personally, except for one thing, and that has to do with cellular and Wi-Fi. Sometimes when going from Wi-Fi to cellular or from cellular back to Wi-Fi, data won't work. It just won't load. So I'll have to go into it. I'll flip on airplane mode, turn it back off, and then it will work just fine. So that seems to still be something that is a little bit odd that happens from time to time, but maybe we'll see that fixed in future updates, but definitely report those issues in feedback if you haven't already and you're having similar issues. But for me, other than that, performance has been very solid, not only on iPhone, but also iPad. No lag, no slowdowns, no crashes, at least on the newer phones. And the same is being said about iOS 14.5 Beta 5 on older devices, whether that be an iPhone 6S all the way up to the newer ones, the iPhone 11. Things do feel much snappier, to me anyway. I'm not sure if they do to everyone, but for me, it's been good. It fixed the issue I had with Bluetooth on my devices where AirPods or AirPods Max would sometimes say they're connected but just not work and then have to be completely repaired to the device in order to work. So that's been an issue for me. However, there are some issues that seem to be fairly prominent for many of you, or many of you are reporting. And the first one has to do with the battery life indicator. Now, if I pull down the control center, you can see that my battery is at 97%. And a lot of people are reporting that this number does not match what your charging percentage is when you're either charging the phone or maybe just on the lock screen and it's telling you the battery life. And so it's at 97%. If I go to the lock screen, for example, you'll see I don't have a battery percentage there. But if I plug in MagSafe, it'll take a moment. You'll see the animation. This says 97% charge, but for some people, this is getting stuck. And then the actual percentage is not matching up 97% to what you have in the upper right of the control center. So a lot of people are saying this is showing up. So it's obviously a bug and needs to be fixed. I've had probably 10 people comment about that, at least, that seem to be having the issue. So it's definitely something that they need to fix. Now, other people have said that when you're on the lock screen and you have HomePods paired, the HomePods Mini, and maybe you want to play something, they're not seeing stereo pairs show up. Now, it's working fine for me, but not everyone is seeing this. So the stereo pair is not showing up for some people if you have those HomePod Minis set up that way, or HomePods. So some people aren't seeing that as well. And then many people are saying that the AirPods Pro or Bluetooth issues are still there. So people are saying Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, cellular connectivity is a problem. Some people are saying Bluetooth connectivity is faster, but it still disconnects. Someone else said it's slower. So it really depends on the device you're using. Also, many people are still having that issue specifically with AirPods Pro. They seem to disconnect or take a while to start audio, or when people watch video, for example. So there's definitely some bugs in this version still when it comes to that. Other people are still reporting apps crashing or lagging severely. Now, I haven't seen this, like I said myself, but quite a few people are reporting it, so it's definitely an issue still. So if you close out or scroll, sometimes there's lag. It just depends on the device and the app you're in, but this seems to be fairly common for some people. It's not there for as many people as last time, but it seems to be a problem still. And then there's also people saying that there's lag when watching video, or the phone might be getting a little bit too hot compared to when they would watch video before. Now, it's completely normal for the phone to get warm when you're charging or watching video, and the phone will actually protect itself to keep itself in a certain range. But if it's very hot out where you're at, depending what country you're in, whether you're outside, what your brightness is at, all of those things can affect the overall heat of the device. So that may be a factor as well. If you're inside in a controlled air-conditioned environment that's around 70 degrees Fahrenheit all the time, for example, you shouldn't be having any issues. But if you're in a warmer climate, it definitely could be an issue for you. Now, like I said, performance is pretty good overall, and that's been the case on the iPad as well. So iPadOS 14.5 Beta 5 has been pretty solid. Again, the one issue I continue to have on this iPad is battery life. Battery life just has not been very good on this device. So you can see it's charged up to 98% right now. And if we go and take a look at the last 10 days, you'll see I charged it to 100% this afternoon, 2:46 p.m. And I used it for about 3 or 4 hours before, and it was down to about 30%. So this seems to be too much usage. Again, hopefully they fix it in the future, but everything else for me is very solid on the iPad. There's no issues with lag. There's no apps crashing. It just seems to work as expected. And most of the time, no problems whatsoever. But there is that issue with battery. Now, battery life on the iPhone, this really varies depending on who you ask, but let's take a look at my battery life here. We'll go to battery. My battery health is at 100% on my 12 Pro Max. And again, it will vary depending on your device, but 80% after 2 years is normal. I get asked that many, many times every single day. So that's why I bring it up every time. If we take a look at the last 10 days, yesterday, I had 3 hours and 14 minutes of screen on time, 54 minutes of screen off time, and I used about 45% of the battery, maybe 40%. So it's not horrible. I could get about 7 hours of screen on time based on that. The day before is less. It just depends on the day. So usually I'm getting about 8 hours of screen on time now with these betas. I do expect them to improve over time. Generally, with my 12 Pro Max, you should be getting 10 to 12 hours of screen on time, just like you would with an 11 Pro Max, for example. The chip is more efficient, even though the battery is a little bit smaller than that phone. The chip is more efficient and should get about the same battery life. Very close either way. So it looks like it's still not 100%, but a lot of people report great battery life. Some don't. But that leads me to, should you install iOS 14.5 Beta 5 if you haven't already? And I would say if you're trying to solve bugs, you're having issues, I would say skip the beta and wait for the final version to come out. If you just wanted to try something out, try out some of the new features, the Face Unlock, Face ID Unlock when you're using your Apple Watch, for example. If you wanted to try that out, well then of course go ahead and try that, but know that it's a beta and that you could have bugs. And if you are using one, again, make sure you report it in feedback, because that's how Apple prioritizes the issues and then fixes them. Now, also, should you install iOS 14.4.2 if you haven't already? And I would say if you're on 14.4, 14.4.1, then absolutely install it, since it will bring security updates to your device. They even release the same security device to older devices because it's so important. So I would definitely install it. You won't see any difference really after a few days in battery life if you're on 14.4.1 based on what people are saying. But again, it will take a few days to know that. But I would definitely recommend it just for the security updates alone. Performance is not any different on any of the devices with that particular update, so I wouldn't be concerned about that, at least from what I'm hearing so far. Now, as far as when to expect iOS 14.5 Beta 6 or release candidate, that really depends on whether or not there's actually an Apple event in April. If there is an Apple event in April, like some are saying again, they said the same people said March, now they're saying April. April definitely seems more likely at this point, and if there is, some people are saying to expect the event sometime around the 6th. If that's true, I would expect an update to RC or release candidate as soon as the 30th, maybe the 31st, and then the final version on the 6th or 5th, depending on which day we have some sort of iOS event or Apple event. Usually they'll release it after that. If that's the case, if not, I would expect it maybe another week or two after that. It just depends on what Apple does. We'll definitely know more earlier this week. Now, before we go into the YouTube community poll, here are all the statistics of issues you've mentioned based off battery life, lag, freezing, and fewer people are mentioning heat now as we get later in the betas. So that's a good sign if you were having the phone get overly warm. But battery life, 63 people mentioned it at the time of this video in the community poll, and those people that mention that could be good or bad. That's not 63 people saying that it's bad or good. It's just that's how many people mention battery. Also, here are all the devices you're using based off the community poll if you let me know in the comments below. So again, the iPhone 12 Pro Max seems to be the most popular along with the iPhone 11. If there's any other phones you'd like to see in these videos, let me know in the comments below. Now let's go into the YouTube community poll, and at the time of this video, 22,000 people have voted, which always is pretty incredible to me. So thank you if you voted. And you'll see 19% are saying it's great, 3% are saying it's terrible, which is good. You'll see Beta 4 is just below, and 4% said it was terrible. So there's 33,000 votes there. There's 22,000 votes here, so only 3% saying it's terrible this time. 6% are saying that it's okay, but some bugs. The same said it last time. And 60% of you are using iOS 14.4.1 or older, or 14.4.2 at this point. And then 12% of you are using Android. And again, I just include that because, well, 12% are using Android and watch these videos, so I really appreciate that as well. Now let's go ahead and take a look at some of the comments and see what you had to say. I'll go over about 10 of them or so, and let's take a look at them. And you'll see Silent World said, not worst, but not the best battery life. iOS 14.5 Beta 4 was better. Sylvia said, battery life is not good, and also the battery percentage on my lock screen always shows 100% when it's not. Jeremy DeBose says, okay with bugs on 12 Pro Max and iPad Pro, Bluetooth just disconnected while listening to music. Been having music pause issues off and on the last few betas, thinking Bluetooth may be the issue. I've had random keyboard freezes and messages freezing. iPad battery drain was ridiculously bad today. Otherwise, not too bad. Gabriel said AirDrop wasn't working on the previous betas on my iPhone 12 mini. Other devices could see the mini, but it'd only say waiting if trying to send something over. With Beta 5, those issues seem to have been fixed. Thomas Baker says, okay on the iPhone 11, great battery life, no bugs. Okay on iPad Pro 2018, except for Safari watching YouTube, you can't comment due to no comment section browser problem. Currently using the Brave browser. And I honestly haven't seen it in the Brave browser. Maybe YouTube changed something so it's not available. Ulyss says, and hopefully I said that properly, the battery problem in the previous beta on my iPhone 12 Pro Max seems to be fixed and it's better than ever. Jim Jam John said, green tint has gotten worse in this update compared to Beta 4. Don't know what they're doing, but trying at least. So I would expect that to be fixed in the future versions where they'll finally fix green tint overall. Rakesh said, running the beta on my iPhone SE 2, no problem, solid battery life, very close to being the release candidate in terms of stability. Vasile says, using this beta on my iPhone 12 Pro Max seems to be very good, good battery life, smoothness, no green tint, no bugs. I hope the final build to be the best version of iOS 14. Thumbs up for Aaron. Thank you. Braden says, it's been great on my iPhone 12 other than my AirPods Pro not wanting to stay connected to my devices. For example, when I go to play a YouTube video, it'll take like 10 seconds to even start playing audio. When you rewind or fast forward, it'll take another 10 seconds to start the audio again. I've also had this issues with AirPods Pro disconnecting on Apple Fitness Plus workouts. You'll just be doing the workout and the audio stops. And it seems to be just the AirPods Pro, as my second gen AirPods are working flawlessly. Other than this, I've had a good experience with iOS 14.5 Beta 5. Everything seems to be stable and it runs smooth as expected. Mike says, not relevant to iOS 14.5 Beta 5, but I'm on iOS 14.4.1 using the 12 Pro Max, and I have a weird connection issue where cellular would suddenly drop, then come back on again. Also, there's some issues with Wi-Fi being glitchy at some times. KM Yambao says, iPhone XR 14.5 Beta 5, App Store has trouble loading even if I'm connected to the internet. Battery drains somewhat fast and heating issues are present. Great performance, but these issues though. Max says, on my 7th gen iPad has been great, almost as smooth as iOS 13.6, but there are still some stability and performance issues like the keyboard. When typing fast, it starts to lag and it can't keep up. Battery life has been surprisingly good, 7 to 8 hours of screen on time. I hope that Apple will polish it more with one more beta before releasing to the public. Fabian says, I had some big bugs with my iPhone SE 2020. So that's it for iOS 14.5 Beta 5. Hopefully we see a release candidate this week and then a final version not too long after that, and it seems to be pretty good. I think they'll iron out those additional bugs and hopefully green tint and any other issues we've been seeing that have been major as well. If you'd like to get your hands on this wallpaper, of course, I'll link it in the description like I normally do. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.